Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more minutes to allow people to arrive and join us, and then we'll get started at 6:05.
Hola, buenas noches a todos. Vamos a esperar unos 5 minutos para que más personas se unan a la reunión. Vamos a empezar a las 6:05. Gracias.
Okay, we're gonna just get started. My name is Nubia. I'm the parent organizer at Long Beach Forward. And I'd like to welcome you to tonight's training with the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. All the acronyms always confuse me. SCDD. First, I would like to ask all of you, if you are joining us with a phone number, if you could please identify yourself by using the rename feature, or drop us a note with your name in the chat and we can do it for you. And then before we start, I would like to introduce to you our interpreter, Edna, who's going to go over with us how we're going to do tonight's training session.
Hola a todos, buenas noches. Primero voy a interpretar lo que acaba de decir Nubia. Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Nubia Flores y bienvenidos a la presentación de hoy con Sofia Cervantes de parte del Concilio Estatal en Discapacidades de Desarrollo. Lo primero que queremos hacer es para aquellos que se están uniendo desde su teléfono y aparece su número de teléfono en la pantalla, les vamos a pedir que que mencionen cuál es su nombre para así nosotros poder cambiarles el nombre que aparece en la pantalla, o si ustedes pueden hacerlo, por favor háganlo. Lo pueden hacer desde el chat. Y ahora voy a dar las instrucciones para la interpretación. Primero lo voy a hacer en inglés y después en español. En un segundito va a aparecer en la parte baja de su pantalla, si están en su computadora, un icono que va a decir interpretación. No está ahí en este momento, pero va a aparecer. Y van a presionar ahí y van a seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia, ya sea español o inglés, y también mute original audio o silenciar el audio original. Si están desde su teléfono, van a deslizar su dedo hacia la parte baja de la pantalla donde aparecen los 3 puntos suspensivos, presionan ahí, van a donde dice interpretación, presionan ahí y seleccionan el idioma de su preferencia, inglés o español. Y después también silenciar audio original. Luego van a regresar a la pantalla original. Si tienen cualquier pregunta o tienen dificultades técnicas, por favor diríjense a José Beltrán vía chat. Hello everyone, good evening. This is Edna Santizo and I'm going to be the interpreter for tonight. I'm going to be giving instructions for interpretation. Everyone on this call needs to choose a language, so please pay attention to the instructions. In just 1 second, we're going to enable the interpretation function. If you're on your computer, you're going to see an icon that will appear next to reactions. It's not there right now, but it will appear in just 1 second. You're going to click there and you're going to select the language of your preference, either English or Spanish. Everyone needs to choose one language, and then you're going to mute the original audio. If you're on your mobile device, you're going to slide your finger to the bottom of your screen and you're going to see 3 dots. Click there, click on language interpretation, and then select the language of your preference, either English or Spanish, and also mute original audio. And then you can come back to the main screen. If you have any technical questions or difficulties, please direct them to Jose Beltran via chat. Thank you. Thank you, Nubia.
Thank you. 1-800-587-01. So at this point, Jose, do you want to enable so everybody's choosing a channel at this point? The interpretation button is now there. So if you need English, you need to select English.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Nancy González.
Okay, and at this point, I'd like to introduce Jose Beltran to go over our Zoom features.
Thank you, Nubia. Antes que comience, hay algunos que todavía no han seleccionado la opción de traducción. Ya tenemos la habilidad. Ahora les voy a recordar. Tienen abajo de la pantalla un icono que parece un mundo. Lo van a seleccionar y van a seleccionar su idioma preferido. Si es inglés, van a seleccionar inglés. Si es español, van a seleccionar español. Pero también van a escoger Mute Original Audio. José Havana, espero que me haya entendido con estas instrucciones. Okay, thank you, Nubia. Now I will give the Zoom details. So first of all, my name is Jose Beltran. I am the Early Childhood Program Manager at Long Beach Forward. At this point, I also want to mention that all the features that we're going to be working with are going to be on your screen. Please pay attention to your chat window. If you need to speak, please place a message on there on the chat, or you can go to the participant feature and raise your hand. Everyone will be muted during the presentation. We will have a Q&A session where we can answer any of your questions, but throughout the presentation, we're going to mute everyone. I will be muting and unmuting those of you that want to speak, but I need to see that you raised your hand or that you placed a message on there so that I can get to you. Lastly, this session will be recorded so that we can share with folks who couldn't make it tonight. We respect your right if you wish to turn your camera off as well. And now I will pass it on back to Nubia.
Thank you all so much for your help. And we're going to be dropping in the chat some information about this session. We'll also put in the chat Sofia's presentation. Everyone should have received the presentation and the IEP guide via email. And now I would like to introduce Sofia Cervantes from SCDD.
All right, thank you very much, Nubia. And everyone else, good evening. It's good to see either your pictures or your names. Perhaps we have met in previous occasions virtually. Perhaps this is the first time. So my name is Sofia Cervantes, and I am from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. I have put my information on the chat, so feel free to grab it from there. And also in the presentation on the first slide, you will see my contact information. So for those of you that may not be as familiar with the State Council, we are a state advocacy agency. Our agency is instituted by federal law. So our role is to provide support to individuals with developmental disabilities and their families. And we do that through one, technical assistance. And all that means is you can feel free to call us and we can answer your questions about the EPs, IPPs, IHSS, SSI, anything related to developmental disabilities. You can feel free to give us a call. It is literally our job and pleasure to answer your questions. So never feel uneasy to give us a call. And then we do, based on all the technical assistance we provide, we learn about the topics that are most important or that appear to be most prominent with families. So we go ahead and do trainings like this for anyone in LA County, as long as they can gather about 20 participants or more. We provide these trainings on various topics. So during this COVID time, we've continued to function from home. And to our surprise, we actually have a lot more participants given this platform that we have that we're very grateful for. And the partners that we have, and newly, with Long Beach Forward, We're happy to be partnering. And so please feel free to keep us in mind for a resource as of now. If it's the first time we meet, know that we are a resource to you from now on for any questions you may have, or if you yourself even had 20 parents that were interested in the same topic, feel free to give us a call, and we'd be happy to discuss details and all of the topics that we can provide. All of our services are completely free, so please feel free to use us as a resource. Other than maybe if we've ever done a large conference and we need to pay for the location, perhaps that may be a low cost, but in general, all of our services are free. Okay, so good to meet you all again. And we know that doing trainings, over Zoom, it's great because we can join in and be in our PJs and, hair all messed up and nobody has to know it, except us, because, we kind of had to comb our hair for you. So it's kind of cool. And then at the same time, you lose a little bit of that interactive element, but we hope to make it as interactive as we can. So feel free to use the chat. Do know, because of time, and so that I can get as much information to you as possible, we will go, I will go through the presentation, and then my goal will be to stop at about 7:30. We'll do a short survey, very, very brief, 6 questions, and then we'll move on to questions that you may have, okay? If in the chat there is a question that you, or during the presentation, if there's a question that you may have about the content, or I missed a word, or you didn't understand a word that I said, please feel free to ask. And the moderators, Nubia and Jose and Michael, they may interrupt me or call my attention so that I can address those content questions. But as far as more specific questions, we'll leave those till the end. Okay, all right. So I will begin to share my screen in just a moment here. And feel free to give me a thumbs up or let me know that you indeed are able to see my screen. All right, is my
I can see.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. And for the translator, I hope I'm going at an okay speed for translation. I sometimes, once I get going, I forget that there's a translator. Okay, so the topic that brings us today is IEP strategies. Okay, so we'll be talking about understanding the process to receive the services that your child needs. And as I mentioned, right below, if you want a screenshot or something, right below is my information. Okay, and if you exchange in the phone number the last digit, the 6 for a 1, so 4631, that's the number for our main line if ever you cannot get in contact with me. Okay. Right, so we will be discussing IEP strategies. I want to let you know this presentation can be very lengthy. It could be up to 2 parts. So we've tried to do the best to condense it and for me to give you what I find to be probably the most useful or the most useful to know now. So it's kind of like a, how they say like an elevator speech. Like if I could tell you everything I could about IEP is the most important. In my opinion, excuse me, that would be this presentation. Okay, so one of the first things that I like to discuss in this presentation is the following. So many times families think that an IEP meeting is the answer for all issues that they may have with the school district or with their school. So although IEP meetings have their very important function, I'd like to give you this first slide, and if you're taking notes, you can, write a note on here. In our perspective, these are kind of the different avenues or the different tools that you may find yourself using whenever you have a conflict with the school. And it may not always be calling an IEP meeting. So let me explain. So IEP meetings, their function and their, the purpose of you requesting an IEP meeting really is only for 2 reasons. So you need an IEP meeting usually if you're going to ask for a new service or if you're going to request a change in a service. So ask for a new service, meaning your child doesn't have a one-on-one, but given the needs that they're displaying and the difficulties that you're hearing that they have, you may say, boy, he really needs a one-on-one. So calling an IEP meeting, absolutely appropriate, okay? 2, if you already have a service, but you need to request an increase in that service or a change in that service. So for example, your son or daughter is getting 20 minutes of communication, of speech therapy, and you find that given their needs, they need more, right? Or your son or daughter is given communication or speech therapy in a group setting. And based on the observation of their needs, you feel that they need to have individual, right? So those 2 reasons, asking for a new service or requesting a change in a service, would be an appropriate use of an IEP meeting, okay? And technically, those are your only 2 reasons why you would call an IEP meeting, okay? Other than, of course, you tend to have them yearly, we'll get into that, and every 3 years, school does a triennial, right? But in terms of you requesting one, new service or increase a service or to change a service, okay? Now, if you were to tell me, man, I have the best IEP, like I love my IEP, I hug my IEP, I have an altar for my IEP, it's that good, okay? Very Day of the Dead, huh? Don't do an altar for your IEP. Okay, but let's say it's the best IEP you've ever had. But you tell me, but you know what? They haven't given him his communication, or he hasn't had a one-on-one because they went on a sick leave and then the person that came to fill in just stopped coming, or the communication, the speech therapist was pregnant and they left early and they just haven't given it to him. If that is the case, there is no need for an IEP meeting. Rather, in this case, what the appropriate venue would be a state compliance complaint. And what a state compliance complaint is a form when your IEP is not being followed, right? So IEP meaning you want to insert things into your IEP. But if your IEP is already wonderful, but the school is not following and not complying with the IEP, then the appropriate source would be to do a state compliance complaint, okay? If you want to learn more about this, if you feel like that's something you need to do, please feel free to contact me. In this presentation, we won't go into depth into each of these, but a state compliance complaint, if you look that up on Google, you will get the form from the Department of Education, okay? So state compliance complaints will ask you like a 2 to 3 form, 2 to 3 pages, and it asks you for what the violation was, what's the violation of the law, or what is the complaint of the service that they didn't follow. It will then ask you for what you hope to be the resolution, okay? So when we're discussing resolution, most families will indicate in that section, 1, the resolution would be, please begin giving the service, right? That has been stalled or has been stopped or paused. 2, some families may request what's called compensatory services, right? Which means give me back all of the services that they were not given during this whole time, right? So that's called compensatory services. Some parents, excuse me, go as far as saying, not only am I requesting that you give the service back, not only am I requesting that you give compensatory service, but I'm asking for additional services so that they can catch up to themselves. Meaning, had they not stopped having services, we presume that they would have been at a higher level in their skill. So we're requesting, give the service back, give them what they lost, and give them additional services so that they can catch up to the level that they would have by this time achieved had the service not stopped, okay? So in that state compliance complaint, all these things are options for you as the parent, for whoever might be doing this state compliance complaint that you're requesting, give me services so they can catch up to themselves. Okay, so again, IEP meetings is for new services or a change in service. Number 2 would be if your IEP is wonderful, but they're not following it, then it would be a state compliance complaint. And then 3 is called a due process. So what that is any disagreement that you have with the school district on what should be added to your IEP. If let's say you call a meeting and you say, based on the needs, my son needs more communication. They have 10 minutes. I'm requesting based on their need that they get 25 minutes. If you say this is what they need, the school says, no, they don't need that. You both are in disagreement. The resolution for that is a due process, okay? For a due process, usually people, and sorry, let me backtrack, let me not say usually, it is highly recommended that you have a lawyer. Some parents choose to represent themselves. We in good faith do not recommend that to you. Special education law is very intricate, and even to the point where even if someone's a lawyer, but they're not a special education lawyer, we find that they have very little likelihood of winning, okay? Now, when we talk about due process and we talk about getting a lawyer, we recognize that many times that may be intimidating in and of itself, right? Who has money for a lawyer, right? So one thing to note is if you have a very strong case, and we'll talk about what that means in a bit, but already jumping ahead, if you have documentation, if you've kept things in writing, and you have a solid case, you've done state compliance complaints, you've done letters to summarize the things that have been not given to your son or daughter, et cetera. If you have a strong case and you find a lawyer that feels you have a strong case and that you will likely win, it is likely that a lawyer may take your case without charging you anything up front, because if you win, the school must reimburse you for the lawyer fees, okay? And only lawyer. And I specify that because if the person is an advocate, that is not in the law for reimbursement, okay? So it would be a lawyer. So if you have a strong case and you were to win, then the school would be reimbursing you those fees for the lawyer, okay? So don't let the lawyer thing intimidate you. It may be possible that you can have that representation at no cost. Again, we're doing this presentation too to let you know what a strong case could look like and to know which things for you to keep in mind, to always be thinking of how am I working up to having a solid, good case for a lawyer, okay? So, and the reason why school has to reimburse if you win is due to FAPE. So free, appropriate public education. So due to the law, due to FAPE, that is why if you have to invest financially for your son to get a public education, a public appropriate education, at that point, it became not free because you had to pay something, right? So at that time, then that is why you'd be reimbursed if you win, okay? So good things to keep in mind. Moving on to our fourth point here in our first slide. And again, we're clarifying the fact that not for everything is it appropriate to have an IEP meeting, right? So whenever you find yourself with an issue related to discrimination, okay? So let's say your sons and daughters classroom, okay? And I know that during this pandemic, this is not the case, but let's say, right, that when your son or daughter was in school, okay, all of her classroom went to a field trip. But you were told, oh, Miss, you know how Johnny is. We're going to go to the museum, but you know how he is, and we just don't have another aide to come with us. So we're just going to get him pizza here, and he's going to stay, okay? He's not going to go to the field trip. That would be an issue of discrimination, right? Just curious, you can use your virtual hand or turn on your camera. Have any of you experienced that there was an occasion where the classroom did something, but your son or daughter with a disability was excluded due to their disability. Has anyone experienced that? I don't see any hands in mine. Okay. So,
Thought I had raised it.
okay, gotcha, Tina. So you've experienced this before then?
I did when my daughter was in 2nd grade,
Okay.
but at the time, the school had not performed an IEP
Got it.
until the next year. So she was unable to go to field trips for the whole year.
Oof, okay, got it. So if there is a exclusion that happens due to the disability, and thank you for your example, Dina, then do we call an IEP meeting? Not necessary. What would happen here is sending a complaint to the Office of Civil Rights. Now, does this take a process? Office of Civil Rights complaints usually take 30 to 90 days to get resolved. So may your child go on this field trip? Maybe not. But one, you want to do it for any future cases with your son or daughter. Two, you're sort of representing the disability community, and hopefully it doesn't happen again in your school. And three, which is very important, if in future you do go to a due process and you have experienced some discrimination and you've done a complaint, then you can give this to your lawyer, right? And say, look, they've been messing up for a while, right? So you are accumulating to the strength of your case by doing this. By no means are we advocates for you to go and be against the school. Our role is to be at your service as family members and individuals with disabilities. We are not in the side of the school or against the school. We're not with the regional center or against the regional center. Also, understand that because we're advocates, we get phone calls from people that are not happy with these systems. I am sure that there's thousands of people that are very satisfied with their school, with their regional center, but as advocates, we get phone calls from those that are not, right? So our strategies and our information to you do indeed come from that perspective of when you have issues, when the system is not doing what it's intended and responsible to do, this is what you may do, okay? Before moving on, just very quickly, know that for a due process, you have a time limit of 2 years. You can go to due process for an issue of up to 2 years. Okay, so let's say you requested a one-on-one, they said that it wasn't necessary, it's within 2 years, an incident happens, perhaps your son, daughter gets bullied, they hence evidence that they need more support, more direct support, you may go to a due process about a disagreement of things of up to 2 years ago, okay? And Nubi, let me just check in with you. Am I missing anything important on the chat or anything, or we're good to continue?
Yeah.
Yes. Juliana had a question.
Mm-hmm.
She asked, what is the difference between a civil complaint versus a due process complaint?
So the Office of Civil Rights, it's specific to discrimination. And mind you, discrimination based on their disability, right? If we're talking about IEP things, it has to be discrimination based on their disabilities. Due process is to resolve disagreements with the school about what belongs in the IEP in terms of services, right? So I think they need 20 minutes. They say they only need 5. We can't resolve it on our own. And my IEP is not as I think it should be. The appropriate venue is due process. So due process is for things related to services. Office of Civil Rights is any incident related to discrimination specifically, okay? May you use complaints of discrimination during a due process to kind of throw it out there that things have not been working well? You can, but you go to due process for things related to services. Okay, hope that answers the question. Was there another? At this point, okay, awesome. So we'll continue. Okay, so these are the 4 things that primarily you would keep in mind. You have a disagreement with the school, ask yourself, what kind of disagreement is it? right? Is it appropriate for me to call an IEP? Do I need to do a state compliance complaint because they're not following the IEP? Do I need to decide if I'm going to go to due process and get a lawyer, or is this a matter of discrimination? Okay, and then you would choose the appropriate venue. Now, the rest of this presentation, we will focus on strategies for your IEP meeting. Okay, and if you have questions of the latter, the state compliance, due process, or Office of Civil Rights, feel free to either ask at the end or we can stay in contact. Okay, so things to know about your IEP. Okay, so you need an IEP. Okay, know that usually IEPs take place every year, usually around the person's birthday. Okay, and know that it's every 3 years, what's called a triennial. An IEP takes place where evaluations are conducted, and we'll get into evaluations a little bit later, but evaluations are conducted so that you can see where the child is at and if changes are needed. Granted, that could be true every year. Okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but so one, know that usually they take place every year, IEPs, and every 3 years, evaluations are done, requested by the school. The school's looking for you to have the child evaluated, okay? And based on those evaluations, you have your triennial, okay? Now, when you're gonna have an IEP meeting, you have the right to record your meeting, okay? So you have the right to record your meeting as long as you give the school 24-hour notice. And let me clarify, it doesn't mean that you have to request permission, but you have to give them enough notice. And that notice is 24 hours. And the reason why that's necessary is because very likely if you record, the school will also record. Okay, so you want to give them enough time to arrange for them to record. Okay. A second very important thing, these are some of the most important things we think for IEPs. Know that when you're in your IEP meeting, okay, and you are asked to sign your IEP, the law says that you must sign your IEP within a reasonable amount of time. However, know that you do not have to sign your IEP that same day. Okay, you have the right to take some time to review it, to say, okay, every section is as we discussed. I agree with everything that's written on here. I'm ready to sign. You are not obligated to sign on that day. What is also important to know is you must sign and be compliant with the law, right? You must sign the IEP, but also you don't have to sign in agreement. So let's say your IEP says that your son receives 20 minutes of communication, okay? And given your IEP and the evaluation that they reviewed, they are suggesting that the 20-minute be reduced to 10 minutes. If you agree with that, perfect. You can sign your IEP in agreement. But if you are not in agreement with that, do not be alarmed if they talk about changing services, taking away services that they already have. You technically never have to lose a service without your own consent. Your IEP should never get worse without your consent. And what I literally mean by that is if you have a service on your IEP, it's already on an IEP, it's a signed IEP from last year, let's say, and they in the new meeting say, we're going to remove these services, do not be alarmed. If you don't agree with these changes, all you have to do is sign in disagreement, and those services cannot be changed. Just to clarify, if you want a new service, that's where the discussion happens and due process may be needed. But if it's for a service that you have already established in an IEP, then you don't have to fear losing that service, as long as you don't sign in agreement, okay? The IEP signature page usually has, I agree, right? So you could agree completely, disagree completely, or partially agree. So you could say, I agree with everything in the IEP, except reducing communication therapy minutes or whatever, however you want to phrase it. Okay, so you must sign in a reasonable amount of time. You don't have to sign that day. And also you have options of how to sign. You don't have to be in agreement with what the school is suggesting. Okay, so that's very, very, very important to know. Some people refer to this as stay put. What stay put means is just that. My IEP, I'm going to sign in disagreement and I want stay put, meaning that the new IEP stays exactly the same. Now, I just want to caution that I'm not saying it's a good idea to just go through every year saying stay put, stay put, stay put, stay put, because your child's needs are changing every year, right? So I don't want to use this as a blanket statement and tell you just put stay put and continue the same every year. That may not be appropriate for your child. Your child may need less or may need more, right? So I'm not saying you stay put all the time as a strategy, but I am saying whenever they want to remove a service and you are not in agreement, you may claim stay put on that service and it should not move, okay? And then you could continue to talking about other sections of the IEP, which we will get to, okay? So moving on.
We have one quick question, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, please.
Jessica, our participant, is asking, what is a reasonable time to sign the IEP according to the law?
Very good question. Very, very good question. So reasonable amount of time, this is a thing with the law, wink. Reasonable amount of time will be determined by the judge. So each judge may consider reasonable amount of time being a different time. So one judge may think 3 days was reasonable. Another judge may think 5, a week, 2 weeks. We tend to suggest between 5 to 7 days as reasonable. But who will determine what reasonable or unreasonable would be whatever judge is looking at your case. Okay, hope that makes sense. And we will return to that reasonable amount of time in just a little bit. Okay, thank you. Was there another question, Nubia?
Just going through it right now. If you want to start on the next slide, I'll.
Yes, will do. So last thing on this slide is parent report. So one very important thing to keep in mind for IEPs is your right and your option to write a report based on your own observations. Now, in this, I'd like to say it's my experience in different communities that many times a parent feels intimidated going into an IEP, right? Many times you walk into an IEP, you have a table full of professionals. They're, they seem very educated. Your education level may vary. And so you may feel either confident because you have education or you really understand this and you've studied this, or you may be part of the group of parents who may say, they're the professionals, they know what's right, I'm not even going to question them, right? So one of my purposes with this presentation is to empower you that you are the expert of your child. And I know that sometimes may feel otherwise. You may not feel like such because you maybe have been in meetings and you're like, they're speaking my language, whether English or Spanish, but I have no idea what they're saying, right? I don't understand what they're saying. So sometimes that's discouraging for parents and it drives them away from participating. So one way to ensure your participation and to even help yourself as a guide during this meeting is for you to write a parent report. Just like an evaluator met with your son or daughter for how long? An hour or two, if that, and they produced a document as thick as, the Old Testament, just kidding, right? But they produced this report that is huge based on 2 hours of observation. How much more do you as a parent, as the expert of your son or daughter, have to offer in terms of observations, of information related to your son or daughter as it relates to their academic development. So when I say report, what I mean by that is you literally can just go through the sections of the IEP, right? And write bullet points of what the needs are based on those categories. For example, communication is your heading. And then bullet number 1, only requests preferred items. Doesn't express when he's hurt, when he's frustrated. He will grab things instead of ask for them and then gets into fights with his peers, whatever it may be. And you can do it in your own language. No need to be fancy, right? It's a parent report. So communication, you've got all your bullet points of the needs, of the deficits under that area, okay? Communication or social communication or social interaction, bullet point, okay? Movement and coordination, bullet points, okay? Safety in school, bullet points, okay? Math, bullet points. So you can use your IEP, look at the sections, and those can be the headings for your parent report. And under each heading could be bullet points of your observations. Okay, so we highly encourage, what occurs sometimes, it's our understanding that many times the parent has a lot to offer during the meeting. However, after the meeting, none of what the parent said may get included in the IEP document. So how can you ensure that your observations and your communications get into the IEP? By offering a parent report. And the law says that the IEP must consider the parent report. Granted, that's exactly what it says, must consider. What does that mean? They must consider it. Does it mean they have to believe in it, do something about it, follow what it says? No, just like the other evaluations on the table. But the law says they must consider it, okay? So your voice must be heard. One of the very important things for you to know is that the law, what it requires is equal participation among the IEP team, meaning that you as a parent are equal to the school. You are not lesser than, you are equal to the school. Therefore, in your IEP meetings, you have the right to ask questions until you understand what's happening. What that means is you get to ask for when the meeting is convenient for you, for what time, what day, what platform. In these days during COVID, it's happening virtually. You get to ask what is convenient for you. The reason I say that is perhaps there's people in this room, perhaps not, that have been told, oh, we need to have your IEP tomorrow. If not, you're going to lose services, or we can't do anything about it. That is not just inappropriate, but it is not according to the law. Why? Because you are an equal participant. All you have to do is, oh, can I get that invitation in writing, please? You get the invitation and say, oh, sorry, can't make it, but these are the other dates that I'm suggesting for our meeting. You have equal power. So don't ever feel that you must do as you're told, or that you're not equally a participant in that meeting. Okay, you are an equal participant. Okay, so we return to this concept of a reasonable amount of time, and you'll see why. So one of the strategies that I always like to make sure that I have enough time to review, one of these strategies is called doing letters of understanding, okay? What a letter of understanding is a letter that the parent writes to document an interaction or an event that occurred that did not get documented by anyone else, okay? It is our understanding that many times conversations take place off the record, or incidents occur in the school, and the school says, oh, yeah, your son fell, no one saw anything. We don't know what happened, right? And then a month later, happens again, and you're told the same thing. Oh, he fell, we don't know what happened, right? So we find that these things happen, but because they're not in writing, it's like they never happened. So when you try to bring them up in an IEP meeting, it's very common that it's disregarded because there's no proof of it. So of course, everyone will say, oh, he fell. I had no idea, right? It didn't happen. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. That's the rule, right? Not in writing, didn't happen, okay? That is true for even your therapies, right? So communication, there's got to be something in writing saying they got it, right? If not, it didn't happen, okay? So a letter of understanding is when the parent writes a letter, okay, to the school and send it to the district, okay, about something that occurred. An example, if let's say your son continues to have these incidents, let's say, and again, my examples later on, we'll talk about during this COVID and stay at home virtual learning, and we can get to that. Some of my examples will be still about the way typically school was done in person, okay? So let's say you continue to get called from school, okay? Let's say it's been happening once a month that you're called and you're told, oh, miss, can you know, your son's with a nurse, he fell, we're not sure what happened, but he's crying, and can you come pick him up? So you have to leave work, you come to the school, you pick him up. You were told that he fell and he had a scratch on his knee. When you get there, he is crying. He indeed has a scratch on his knee. His shirt is also ripped. His shoelace is cut. His hair is cut. Looks like he went to war. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but you get the point, right? Your son doesn't just have a scratch on his knee. Something happened, okay? But when you ask what happened, no one knows, okay? Let's say on his IEP, it says that he has a one-on-one. And you ask, where was the one-on-one? Did someone see what happened? No one knows. No one knows. Our most encouraged strategy is you come home, right? You can take pictures if you want. You write a letter saying, dear such and such, thank you for giving me a call today. At 2:05, I was called and asked to pick up Johnny. I was told that Johnny had a scratch on his leg. He had fell. When I got there, my son had a scratch on his leg. He was missing the left part of his hair. He was missing, his shirt was ripped. His shoelace was also cut. He had a bruise on his left arm, whatever you observed, okay? When I asked what happened, I was told by such and such that no one saw the incident. Very important. If anything in this letter is incorrect, please notify me within a reasonable amount of time. There's your reasonable amount of time again, okay? So this letter you would send in writing and through registered mail, or you take it personally and get it stamped, or through fax, okay? And I'll address the email in just a little bit. The goal here is for you to have evidence that you turned in a letter and that it was received by them. Why? Because if you don't have evidence that they received the letter, then this phrase, if anything in this letter is incorrect, please notify me within a reasonable amount of time, loses power. Because all the school has to say is, oh, I've never seen this letter. We never saw this letter, right? And then what happens? It didn't happen. Okay, so you want evidence that they received it. Registered mail, fax, or you take a copy yourself and the person signs it, stamps it, okay? Right now, I know that we're living a lot through email. Our suggestion against email is the following. Through email, you can prove that you submitted an email, that you sent an email, but if the person doesn't reply, you don't have evidence that they received it, okay? Which is why we again suggest through registered mail, fax, or taking it in person, okay? Granted, I know that that's different right now, okay? So very, very important. The point of these letters is, let's say that you were called once a month because of these incidents. In all of them, you say that no one knows what happened. No one could tell you what occurred. So let's say this is the case, okay? When you have your IEP meeting, you say, my son has a need, right? He's being bullied or whatever your experience is, okay? He has a need. I'm requesting, based on his need, a one-on-one during unstructured time, during lunch, during recess, while walking from one classroom to another. I'm requesting a one-on-one. If the response is, oh, miss, but no, he does great, he's doing wonderful, that is where your letters of understanding come in, right? I've been called once or twice a month in the past 6 months, and no one has seen what is wrong with my child. I am concerned for his safety. I sent a letter on the 1st, on the 15th, then in February, right? So now we're talking concrete things. And because you put, if anything in this letter is incorrect, please notify within a reasonable amount of time. If they did not respond to your letter, what that means is that everything in your letter is correct, because they did not respond to you notifying you otherwise. Okay, so this is the power of the letters of understanding. All right. Okay, anything pertinent before I continue, Nubia?
We actually have quite a few questions, so I'm thinking that we just go through I've asked everyone to
Perfect.
hold their questions, write
Okay.
them down, and then we'll open the floor at the end so
Very
they
good.
can ask you.
Good. Yeah, I see the chat popping. Okay, good. Thank you for your questions. We're excited for them. Okay, so we have lots of information left. I'm going to go as quick as I can. Okay, so in talking again, still about IEP meetings, one very important, I keep saying one very important thing, everything's important. But one thing to remember is, while we want you as a parent, as a guardian, as a representative of a person with a disability, to be very aware that your son and daughter is intelligent, has a lot of strengths, is competent, and can achieve a lot in life, while we want you to be certain of that and know that in your heart of hearts, what is true is that an IEP, right, and requesting services is a deficit-driven process. So IEPs need to focus on what they cannot do. So we need to go in ready, hence the parent report, right? We need to go in ready to talk about the things they cannot do. Another thing is we need to speak in terms of appropriate services, not the best services. So let me explain that. So, and it seems like a play on words, and it is, but it's an important thing to be aware of. If I say 20 minutes of communication is the best thing for my son, we can almost assure you, your son will not get 20 minutes. Why? Because the law doesn't promise the best education. It offers an appropriate education. So it's a very simple word, but one that is very beneficial for you to be aware of. So we speak in terms of adequate or appropriate, not the best, not optimal. We are looking for what is appropriate for my son based on his needs, based on her needs. Okay, so again, seems like a play on words, and it is. Okay, so the minute you say this is the best for my son, him having a one-on-one is the best, you ain't gonna get it. Okay, because they're not responsible for the best. And you can just switch your words based on his needs. A one-on-one is appropriate. To ensure his health and safety, a one-on-one is appropriate. In order to ensure that he reaches the communication level appropriate for his age, 20 minutes is appropriate. Okay. You also want to be mindful when you get an evaluation, and we're going to get into evaluations in just a bit. When you get an evaluation, okay, and you see the word best anywhere on there, usually these evaluation reports are rough drafts. So you may request and say, it's not the best, it's appropriate. You can request that be changed on those rough drafts, and you want that to be changed. Because again, when we speak in terms of best, they're not responsible to give you best, they're responsible to give you appropriate, adequate education. And again, that comes from the phrase that we talked about earlier, free and appropriate public education, not free and best, okay? Free and appropriate. So think in terms of that, okay? Appropriate and according to their needs. It's not, oh, I want him to have 20 minutes. That's great, right? But what's appropriate, and it's based on his needs. So I sound like a broken record, but when you hear me talk, right, I keep saying based on their needs. You can request this based on their need, based on your observations of their need, right? Everything is based on need and based on something being appropriate, okay? So in IEP, the format, right, the sections of the IEP, you usually find that at the beginning, evaluations are discussed, okay? So an evaluation is supposed to assess the level at which your son or daughter is performing. And those levels, that data are called, you'll often hear PLOPs, present levels of performance. So evaluations give you present levels of performance, and we'll get into that in a second. Present levels of performance tell you where they are in terms of their skill level. That will give you an indication whether they are within good levels with the rest of their peers that are typical, or whether they are below. If they are below, that helps us develop the next thing, goals and objectives. Part of the IEP is also accommodations and modifications. We'll get to that in a second too. Based on those goals and objectives, that's where services come from, right? And the reason I say that is it seems that many times parents may stay silent throughout the first half of the meeting. And until the services parts come, then the parent says, okay, here we go, I brought my list. He needs communication, he needs OT, he needs a one-on-one, he needs some sensory items, he needs a quiet room, while the parent never participated in the beginning where we talked about the needs, right? So it's important to participate all throughout the meeting so that you establish what the need is when we're talking about present levels of performance, that you ensure that good goals are established. Because once goals are established, services must flow naturally from those. If there's a goal, they have to provide a service. So many times we pay more attention to the services and we engage in this process backward. We're ready to talk about services, but we don't do enough work talking about the needs, the challenges, and developing and making sure that the team develops appropriate goals and objectives, okay? So it's important to start from the top down and to participate all throughout. Lastly, in the IEP, you'll find that it discusses placement, okay? So when we talk about placement, we mean, are they in a special day class? Are they in an autism focused class? Are they in a special education class, severe to moderate or mild to moderate, right? All those things are placements, okay? So all of these sections are discussed as part of the IEP, okay? Again, just making the point, many times, many families approach the IEP process backward, okay? But we're learning it's important to contribute to the needs. And again, hence your parent report, okay? And this is just a little graphic to remind us, we must start from the bottom, right? What are the needs? What are the goals? What are the services, okay? If we can do a good job setting a foundation for what the needs are, goals will be developed and services will have to be a must, right? That sounds redundant. Will be a must, okay? So services will be a must. There's goals, they have a responsibility to provide a service, okay? So you know your child well and what services may be beneficial for them. So contribute to that. And again, we make mention of the importance of the parent report, okay? In this section that's coming, we're focusing on evaluations, okay? So it is very important that you understand evaluations and the evaluation of your son and daughter before the meeting, okay? It is very difficult if you are in the meeting and you are handed the evaluation and you're trying to understand, what are they saying about my son or daughter? Do I even agree with this evaluation? What is it telling me? So one thing you may do is when you sign consent for your son or daughter being having an evaluation done, you could always in writing with a date, okay, always in writing and with a date, you can request that the evaluation report be given to you 3 days before the meeting, 5 days before the meeting. Let me clarify. It is not in the law that they have to give this to you, which is why in some cases, parents don't receive it, even if they requested it. However, so you can't go, I don't want to falsely educate you and say, go in there and say they have to give it to you within 5 days. That is not correct. You can kindly request it, but what the law does say, if we remember, is the law says you are an equal participant with them. So if they have information prior to the meeting that you don't, how are you supposed to participate equally if you weren't privy to that information? That is an argument according to the law. Okay, so you can request to be given that report, that evaluation report, days prior to your meeting, so that you, just like they were able to, have the opportunity to review the report and come ready to discuss it. Okay, now keep in mind just some brief strategies. And again, I like to clarify, it is not our intention to be against, for or against the school. We are here for you. So strategies that we find have helped people is if you find that your Maribel Osorio, if you wouldn't mind, if you would mute your speaker, that would be great. Señora Maribel, si pudiera poner en silencio su micrófono. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Okay, so one thing for you to consider is, we've heard from parents, let's say the parent requested that the evaluation be given to them 5 days prior. The day of the meeting comes, they were not given that, and then we get to the meeting and the school hands them the evaluation. Oh, here you go. And you're about to start the meeting. I am not saying that this is going to be a strategy that will make your IEP team happy, but I am saying that for some parents, it's been effective of saying, you know, I requested this evaluation prior to the meeting so that I can be ready. I was given it till right now, so I'm going to need to, one, have a recess before the meeting. I need 30 minutes to review this, or two, I'm going to need to reschedule this meeting. Will that be great for the IEP team? No, but if your end goal is for a pattern to change, that may do it, okay? We encourage collaboration with the school. We encourage that you collaborate, that you be positive, that you have a good relationship with the school. We don't encourage, you know, bumping heads. You can use any strategy. You can let them know, I really need it prior. If not, I may have to call a recess or reschedule, because again, your legal argument, right? Not that we're encouraging you to go there like a lawyer, but your legal argument is, I'm an equal participant. If you have information that I don't, I'm not going to be able to participate as effectively as I need to. Okay, so know that that is there. So important for you to understand the IEP. There are requirements to evaluations. Okay, very, very important. Okay, you have the right. Let me backtrack. The school is required to conduct an evaluation every 3 years. Okay, so school, because they have the need to fulfill their requirement, they will come looking for you, very likely, every 3 years. They must do an evaluation every 3 years. But you have the right to request an evaluation every year. School is not going to look for you every year. They're going to look for you every 3, but you may request it from the school every year. Do you have to do it every year? Not at all. If you feel like not a lot of change has occurred, your IEP, you know, it's still looking fine and you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But you have the right to have an evaluation done every year. Again, school is required to do it every 3. You have the right to request it every year. Do it in writing, okay? Right now, during COVID, it is our understanding schools are still required to be doing evaluations. Will they be virtually? Yes, very likely. So you as the parent get to decide whether you want to go for it virtually and see what comes of it, or whether you'd like to make the decision to wait. But again, it is our understanding, and we're part of a task force that meets with special education lawyers. And so from their conversation, we get this information, and it is our understanding they still have the responsibility to do evaluations and to do the evaluations within the same time frames before the pandemic. Okay, again, because it's virtually, will they get to capture the essence of the needs of your son? Maybe not. And that may be your concern, right? So you may choose to wait, but know that you are in your right, okay, to still have evaluations. Okay, always request them in writing, okay? Now, very important, and we know, you know, I hope my voice has not bored you yet. So, and if I've lost your attention a little bit, feel free to stretch a little bit, take a little sip. This next section, I find to be highly important and beneficial. So I'm kind of through the, okay. So here we go. This is the importance, okay, of understanding your child's evaluation. So you may or may not be familiar with this graphic. We call this graphic, it's called a bell curve, okay? And bell curves in general, forget about special education right now, bell curves usually give us information about different things, and they let us know where the majority of people fall in, okay? So I'm gonna give you a non-special education example so that we get an understanding of what this graph means, and then we'll apply it to special education, okay? So if you see on the screen here, we have a bell curve, and we notice that from 16% at the bottom, do you see where my cursor is? Are you able to see my movement or not?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Okay, thank you very much, Angelica. Okay, so we have 16% to 84%, okay? So this 34% and this 34%, that composes the majority of people, which is why the curve is the thickest in the middle. So this curve, whatever topic we're talking about, it already tells us the majority of people fall within this 68%, okay? 34 and 34. So 68%, the majority of people fall within this realm. Then you've got people who are above that range, and then you have people who are below that range. So let's say that this graph was telling us about the average height of women, okay? So what do you think is the average height for women? What do you think is like what's the average? What's the range of our height for women? What would you guys say?
5'4".
Okay, yeah, maybe 5'3", 5'4" to 5'7", would you guys say? So we could say the majority of women, right? The majority of us, our height is 5'4" to 5'7". Right now we could all lie because this is all you could see from me, right? So I'm a 6, and I stand up and I'm quite not. I'm 5'6", I think. So 5'4", let's say, to 5'7" is the average. So our 16%, okay, so right here we're saying 5'4" to 5'7" is the average of women's height. So the majority of us are going to be found within this realm. However, we have women who are beyond 5'7". Okay, so let's say 5'8" to 6. 6 would be a pretty tall woman. Yeah, pretty tall. Okay, so above average would be a woman who measures between 5'8" and 6 feet. Then we have women who completely surpass that and are superior to the average, and they may even fall under the condition of, sorry, I don't know why I know this term more in Spanish than in English, but anyone know the term? The condition where they are giants, right? That is a condition. They would be among this round that we see here, right, of 95%, of 98% to 99. So you've got the average, most of us, 5'4" to 5'7". Then you've got your 5'8" to 5'6", but then you've got women that way surpass that. If we go on the opposite side of the bell curve, we find that there are women below 5'4", maybe 5'3" to 4'11". They are below average, right? My mom would fall in that. She always makes fun of me. She says, I'm shorter than you, but I am your mother and I will smack you if I need to. She tells me. So, and she does. So there's women that are below the average. And then there's women, right? There are people who fall even below that. Again, for some reason, I have this term more in Spanish than in English, but there's a condition, right? And I believe they are politically correct, called little people, right? So those would be people perhaps that then measure below 4'10", okay? So again, talking about height of women, we look at this scale and we know there are people that have an average height, there are people that are above that and that are beyond that, and then there are people that are below that, and then there are people that are way below that, and we can even say deficient, okay? Does that graphic make sense? Does that explanation make sense for the most part? Hope so.
Yes.
Yes, okay, awesome, hope so. So now, coming back to special education, okay? When your son or daughter has an evaluation done, what that means is that the evaluator is trying to find where your son or daughter falls on this bell curve. Where are they going to put the dot of where your son belongs in terms of his present levels of performance? When we do an evaluation, where does he perform? Does he perform within the average with most students? Does he perform above average? Does his score, is it superior to most students? Or is he on the opposite? Is he below average or is he deficient? So again, when your son or daughter undergoes an evaluation, the goal is to find out where are we going to put a dot on this bell curve? Where is it going to be? I would love to tell you that your evaluation is going to come with a pretty graphic like this one, but most likely it does not. I want to tell you that this training for evaluations is a separate training because we go through this whole sheet and we talk about all these numbers that you see on here. But I'm going to try to give you the very quick version. You see where it says standard score, subtest score, T-score, and C-score? All that means is that when your son or daughter is evaluated, the reports are generated in specific numbers. But numbers are different under standard scores, they're different under subtest scores, they're different as T-scores, and they're different as Z-scores, and they're different as percentage. I know that may sound confusing, which is why this training is a whole other training, but notice that 50% is the equivalent of 100 in standard scores. 100 is the equivalent of 10 in subtest scores. 50 is the equivalent of a T-score, and 0 is the equivalent of 50 as a Z-score. The reason I'm telling you this is when you look at your evaluation, question number 1 is how did they report the scores? Did they use percentage? Did they use standard scores? Did they use subtest, T-score, or Z-score? If you know that and you have the number, you can come to this graph right here, okay, which is on your presentation. So you can print out a bunch of these if you want or save it on your computer. You can come and find where the evaluation says that your son lies. If the report is submitted to you and they reported the scores as standard scores, and they say that your son scores under standard scores at a 60, can someone tell me what does a 60 mean in standard scores? Does that mean they're an average, above average, superior, below average, or deficient? Can anyone tell me?
Below average.
Below average. And actually, very below average. Because if you notice, these numbers are decreasing by 5. So here we have 80, 75, 70, 65. And here is 60. So your son or daughter is at the end, at the farthest left of deficient. So let's say your score for your son said your son is deficient in communication. And yet you flip through the report and the report says, the recommendation says, the student does not require any services. Does that make sense to you? It shouldn't. How can you tell me, right? Yeah, how can you tell me that my son is deficient and yet your recommendation is no services? So this is what we mean by being prepared and understanding your evaluation. You don't have to have the answers. All you have to do is present yourself and say, and scratch your head, literally, right? And say, I don't know if I just don't understand this, right? We like playing that card, like, I don't, I'm dumb. I don't know what I mean. I know nothing, right? It's okay to play that card, right? I don't understand this, but my son is way below average. How are we going to help him increase if your recommendation says no services? I don't get it. Can you explain to me? And zip it, right? Stay quiet. Let them answer. And remember, you're recording, right? Everything's being recorded. Wonderful. So you just listen. We refer to that as the evaluation is internally inconsistent. What that means is your results don't match your recommendation. Okay? Now, what is important to know is obviously, sorry, that my words on this are only in Spanish. So what we know from this graph is if your son or daughter falls within average to superior, are they going to get any services? No, because they're average or better. They're like any other student. So it's very likely your son or daughter will not be offered any services. If their score is between the below average, it's likely that, or they should be, it's likely that they should be offered some services. If they fall in the deficient category, then they should be receiving more services. Okay? Hope this is making sense, right? So average to above, no services. They're like everybody else. If they test below average, they should be getting some services. If they test deficient, they should be getting more services, absolutely more services. Now, when you are told, when you know the number, the score of your son or daughter, and you map it in this graph, okay, that we just saw, If your son is being evaluated for communication and you are told that your son scored in percentage, right? The bottom numbers, in percentage, he scored a 75. Okay, he scored a 75 in percentage for his communication. That means he fell within the average, right? If you look at this and you say, in communication, that sounds about right, okay? Then that sounds about right. And that's what it is. And it's very likely that you won't get any communication, and that may be okay with you because communication may not be his challenge. So you might be okay with that. But let's say you are told he scores 75%, and you say, who? What kid is that? Oh, you're saying my son is average for communication. Yeah, no, right? My son is nonverbal, or my son has much difficulty communicating. There's no way that he is at a 75% within the average. And mind you, on the higher half of the average. No way. If that is you, you have the right to a second evaluation, to a second opinion. And we call that, right, or those are called independent educational evaluations. Those are called IEPs, okay? Those are usually, excuse me, paid by the school, okay? And those are a second opinion. But you must first allow the school to do their own evaluation, and you must disagree with their findings. Only until then may you request an independent evaluation, okay? Now, you must know that when you request an independent evaluation, the school has two options, okay? They can either say, yes, we're gonna pay for your independent evaluation, or they may say, we believe so much in our evaluation and that it is an accurate evaluation that we, the school, are gonna take you, the parent, to due process. They can do that. So one, either they fund your independent evaluation, or they take you to due process, because they're saying, nope, we're not wrong, we're right, and we want to defend it in due process, okay? Know that these are their two options, okay? In our experience, from the families we serve, we find that it is more likely that they pay the independent evaluation instead of taking you to due process. However, we do know of some parents who have gone to due process because the school took them to due process. But very briefly, let me just give you this information, and I hope I can make it clear. Okay, so the school only has these two options. Either they fund it or they take you to due process. They request a due process. Be careful with them not maneuvering you to say, you take us to due process, because whoever initiates due process has what's called the burden of proof. So if they take you to due process, they're the ones that have to have all this evidence against, let's say, you. Versus if you're sort of tricked into initiating due process, then you're going to be the one that needs that has the burden. And technically, you're not fighting anything. You're saying, I want my independent evaluation. If they don't want to pay for it, they take you to due process. Okay, so you're waiting for their payment for evaluation. Usually the school will give you a list that they know of independent evaluators. What that means is they are not contracted with the school. They are not paid by the school. They're independent. Or if you have your own, you may look for an evaluator, independent. You do want to be mindful, though, that your evaluator is as good in title or better than the evaluator of the school. And I mean in terms of education or licensure, okay? In simpler terms, if let's say the person who did an evaluation for the school is a doctor, don't get a nurse, right? You've got to get the same title or better, okay? Because obviously then that's going to be an argument. Well, they know best. Yours was done by someone lesser than this experience, okay? So keep that in mind. Very, very quickly, because we have reached our time, okay? So know that present levels of performance, that's what you get from the evaluations. Know that it is super important that you take your time with making sure that your goals are appropriate, okay? That they're not too low, that they're not too high. Most people run the risk of having goals that are too low, okay? As long as the school, as long as your student meets their goals, on paper, it looks like the school did their job. So it is always on the school's interest or in the school's interest to keep goals low. But for you and your student, that's not a good idea, because that means he may meet his goals 3 months in, and what are we going to do the rest of the school year? We're wasting time. Okay, so you want to be present and mindful in that conversation so that you make sure that the goals are appropriate. Okay, you want to make sure that goals are SMART. Okay, we refer to SMART goals as they're specific, they are measurable, they have action words, they're realistic and relevant, and they're time limited. Okay, I'm going to put an example here of what we would call a SMART goal, while I give you a very brief example, because I know we have like 90 questions and we have half an hour, okay? But let me tell you this, know that you have the right to understand what your goal means. What I mean by that is many times the goal is as follows. The student will write their name with 75% accuracy, 6 out of 7 trials. Anyone heard a similar goal? Okay, you usually have some percentages in there and you've got some trials. Okay, it's a suggestion. Does it mean school's gonna do it? I don't know. But our suggestion is ask for them to provide a reference for what it will look like when your son writes their name at 75%. If 100% is this, okay, my name's Sofia. If this is 100%, what does 75% look like? If they tell me, does it mean that my O is enclosed, right? Does it mean that my sticks are off? I'm trying to, okay? Let's say this is what I produce, okay? What percentage is this? Let's say this is 60%. And let's say that's the goal. The goal is the student will write their name with 60% accuracy. Please know that this is just a very lame example on my behalf, okay? This is by no means literal. So let's say this is 60%. And you have this on your IEP. This is what, excuse me, what it'll look like when they do 60%. It will be very easy if you get to your IEP and they say, oh, ma'am, your son met his goal. Oh, wonderful. Can I see it? And this is what you find. Is that 60%? Does that look like the above? That would be very tangible for you to be able to identify, oh, they indeed met the goal. Or, I don't think anyone needs to advocate here. Are you telling me that this looks like 60%? What you said was 60%, right? Same thing for shapes. For example, be very specific. Which shapes are they going to learn how to do? A diamond is very different than a rectangle. A heart is very different than a circle. So show me which shapes with how much accuracy. And then just to clarify, the trials, what that usually means, 6 out of 7 trials is out of 7 times that they do it, 6 times they will do it at 60%. They usually leave room for error because we're human, right? We never really do anything at 100%, okay? So that's why they do 6 out of 8 trials or 6 out of 10 trials. That's part of the goal, okay? So you wanna make sure you have a good goal. That's what we mean with good goals, okay? You wanna make sure that you have some objectives. Objectives are smaller steps to get to your main goal, okay? And I'm gonna skip a little bit through some of this, okay? These are some of the services, and you'll have it in your presentation. These are some of the services that are available through the school. Mind you, remember, you have to go in ready to discuss the need. But sometimes we understand that it's helpful to look at what's available. But we can't go in there and say, oh, so they gave me this menu and I'd like combo number 3, right? It doesn't work that way. So use this as a reference, but then work on the need. Work yourself down, right? What are the needs to be able to get this service? Okay. Accommodations are things that can be that change how your student learns. Okay, and in the next pages we have examples of that. It changes how they learn it. Okay, my student needs to be in a separate room when they're taking a test. It's the same test, but he needs more time. He needs to be in a room. He needs to sit in a beanbag. He needs to sit in a bounce ball. He needs to have a thicker pen. All those are accommodations. It doesn't change what they learn. It just changes how they're learning it or producing it. Modification is it changes what they learn. Okay. So it may be they're reading, but at a lower level, academic grade level. Okay. They're doing a test, but their test is multiple choice while the others has to be essay, right? It already changes what you learn and what you're producing. Okay. Lastly, placement and location. So again, you are entitled, your son and daughter is entitled to the least restrictive environment. What that means is an environment that is as closely as possible to the environment that a typical student is learning in, which that would mean with their peers in a regular classroom with no support. That would be the least restrictive. That's what a typical student does. So your goal is always the least restrictive environment. Okay. Very quickly, this very quickly just encourages you to, and this is a whole other section of the presentation, but the laws of adverse assumptions, what that means is we don't want to be pessimistic, but be prepared for the worst. Be prepared for a due process. Don't live trying to avoid a due process, because if in the future you ever want to go to due process and you've never thought that way, you're not going to have anything in writing. You're not going to have any complaints filed. You're not going to have anything to give to a lawyer, right? So live as if you're going to go to due process. If something great happens, do a letter of understanding for that too. Wow, ever since my son got a one-on-one, my son has not had an incident. He's come home whistling. He is doing better. He is sleeping and he sings as we drive to school because he's excited. Because if ever they say we're taking away that one-on-one, guess what? But look at how my son was before the one-on-one. I used to send you guys letters of him not sleeping, pulling his hair, pulling his eyelashes. And then look, I sent you love letters after that because he had a one-on-one and he was doing great. And now you want to take it away. Why? Do we want him to go back to pulling his eyelashes and hitting other peers? Is that what we want? Right? So you are always thinking future-wise as if you're going to have to defend your services, so that if and when you find yourself needing to, you have enough information. Okay, so the end of this presentation is just a review of what we've talked about. Remember how important letters of understanding are. That can help you prepare for a bad day. Okay, remember to be part of all the sections of your IEP. Always do things in writing. Always be clear with your disagreements. Remember the rule of using the words best for your son instead of, sorry, I just messed up, of using the word appropriate instead of best, okay? And based on their needs. You don't have to sign the IEP that same day. You can sign it in disagreement and ask questions. You have the right to understand everything on your IEP, okay? And then just some resources here in the back. And that brings us to the end, formally, of our presentation, okay? So thank you for bearing with me. I know this can be a lot of information. I hope it's been helpful. 1 second. Okay, and now we will move on to questions. However, if you wouldn't mind us being able to do these presentations, what allows us to do this is to continue justifying that they are needed, and 2, that they are beneficial. So if you would please take a few seconds and answer the 6 questions that will come up in a poll, we would really greatly appreciate it. And as we do that, there are just 6 questions and it just requires you to answer yes or no. And as you do that, I believe Nubia will begin taking some questions, okay? So if we can have the poll released, please. Awesome. And you can just choose your answers. Just so you know, we cannot see who answered what. We can only see how many people answered. So please feel free to be, honest and share your opinion with us. If you have extra comments, please feel free to write them on the chat. Okay.
We had questions
Yes.
during your presentation, and now I just welcome opening the floor. You just
Okay.
raise your hand and then we'll call on you in as best as we can in order.
Okay.
So let's see. We have a question from Yvette. Yvette, would you like to unmute?
Yeah. Hi. First, thanks for all of this information. I took lots of notes, and it's a little overwhelming, but my daughter's newly diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm working with her school to figure out what our next steps are to help support her. And I just got an email from her counselor today saying that the school psychologist says they're not doing initial IEP assessments due to not being in person schooling. And I saw somebody else had a similar question, so I feel like I'm not alone, maybe.
Yeah.
But just wondering, is that true, or what do I need to tell them or contact?
Yeah. One, because this is kind of developing information, this pandemic has taken us to a lot of unknown territory, and also things are changing. So my first thing I just want to encourage, sorry, I lost the name of who was speaking, but for the person that made the question, and for anyone else in the same boat, please feel free to contact me on the side after this presentation in case I learn anything different in days to come. But as far as we know, they still have the responsibility to do evaluations. So one, we would ask, I would wonder, have they given you that response in writing?
Yes.
They have.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they reference any law or anything?
No. This specifically was the counselor email saying that their sorry, I'm trying to bring up the email. Their psychologist says everything's put on hold for initial IEP testing until in-person schooling is resumed.
Okay. So definitely keep that. But you can ask them for, it sounds like that's an email.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So you may ask them if they can reference, do you have a policy? Can you direct me to where the the California Department of Education has released that? You may use that as a strategy, or I'd suggest stay in contact with me and let me find out more of strategies for you all that are in the same boat, how to move past that, if that's the case, and how to advocate better. But if you also like, it depends what strategy and what relationship you want to have with them, but you can ask them, can you direct me to where you're receiving that mandate? or where you're receiving that directive.
Okay.
Yeah, as again, your effort of continuing to kind of accumulate these.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Yvette. Okay. Next.
Next we had, I lost track of that thing. Maria. María.
¿Soy yo? Creo.
Montalvo?
Sí.
Is it me?
Ok. Ok, ¿puedo hacer la
Yes.
pregunta en español?
Can I speak in Spanish?
Yeah. Sí, adelante.
Ok, tengo una pregunta.
So I have a
Eh,
question.
Mi hija fue
My
evaluada en el
daughter
área del
was
habla y lenguaje
evaluated in speech
porque ella tenía los servicios
because
del otro
she
distrito,
had services from a previous school district.
pero en este distrito
But
donde ella está
here,
asistiendo,
now on this district,
decidieron evaluarla de nuevo
they decided to do another evaluation
porque no estaban siguiendo las recomendaciones
because
del
they weren't
previo
following
IEP.
the recommendations of the previous IEP.
Mi pregunta es,
My question is,
¿quieren removerle los servicios basada en el reporte que fue
they
hecho?
wanna remove the services
Porque no fue evaluada en todas las
because
áreas.
she wasn't evaluated in all the areas.
Pero el reporte que me están dando,
But if-
he notado varias discrepancias.
Señora María.
Sí.
Sí, deme un segundito porque creo que estamos teniendo un poco de dificultad con los canales. I'm hearing some of the Spanish speakers saying that they can't hear. Do we want to pause anything or do we want to return to English and translation?
María, ¿está adentro de la habilidad de interpretación o está en el canal principal?
Perdón, ¿cómo dice?
Que si se metió a una sala de interpretación o no escogió nada.
No escogí, creo que nada. ¿Quiere, me meto a español entonces?
Sí, por favor.
Ok.
En español los estaba escuchando.
So I'm on the Spanish channel right now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my question again is, how many areas do they evaluate in the area of speech?
Okay. I'm on the English channel. I'm still good, right?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, you're good.
So just to I'm going to answer in English. So to Maria's question, one, I just want to address what I think one of her initial questions was. So your IEP follows you to any school that you go to. So your IEP stands as is and should be followed by any school that you go to. If the new school doesn't follow the IEP, that would be a straight state compliance complaint, okay? If they want to do their own evaluations and suggest changes and you are okay with those changes, you can sign an agreement. But if you're not in agreement, as we discussed, you can sign in disagreement and your IEP should stay as is. As far as how many sections they evaluate, the law says that evaluations should be done in any area of disability or suspected disability. So if there are areas that there's already a determined disability, an evaluation should be done or can be done. And if there's any new areas of suspected disability, then she can request evaluations in those areas of suspected disability. Okay.
Okay. Next question. We have, actually,
Sí, a
I have
usted, de nada, María.
is from Vanessa Che.
Hello, Vanessa.
Vanessa?
I'll let you guys answer that. I don't know what the best thing will be.
I have a question. I always have issues with the IEPs meetings. It's because if they give it to me in Spanish, but all the notes and the most important information, it's in English. So when I ask for a copy, a complete copy, they tell me that they will not give it to me until I sign it. But if I want the notes, that they can have a interpret for me at that moment. But then how can I make sure that the interpreter is interpreting correctly? So what can I do there?
Yeah. So one, in terms of ensuring that the live interpretation is correct, it is to your advantage to record the meeting. That will allow you to, you later on, verify with someone, were they translating what I was being told? One. Two, you can sometimes tell, sometimes the English speaker speaks for a minute and then the Spanish speaker says, oh, dice que está bien. Oh, they said it's fine. They just spoke for a minute and you told me 5 words, right? So then that itself, if you're recording, can be evidence that that interpreter is not being appropriate and not providing you the appropriate information. As far as the actual document, I do hear this from a lot of families, and it gets a little bit tricky because technically, up until the time that you sign, the IEP is a rough draft, as it should be, because they cannot complete the IEP without you. So you should never get a final draft from the school and say, hey, just sign it here. Don't worry about it. You have to participate in that meeting, and then your signature makes it final. So it is common for some schools to say, well, we're not going to produce the final translation until you sign, because that'll make it final. So one thing that you could do is, if you feel that you understood what was discussed, well, let me backtrack. One, you could request for that document to be translated. The downside is the law doesn't give them a time limit or a required time frame for when they have to give it back to you. So when you do this, unfortunately, it shouldn't be this way, but it delays the process, right? But you are definitely in your right to say, I'm requesting that the IEP that I'm going to sign be translated so that I understand what I'm signing. Okay, that is completely reasonable. Now, if you're interested in services starting because you're being offered some good services, what you can do, if you feel comfortable, right, is you can sign an agreement, and you in Spanish can indicate what you are signing in agreement to. So I'm going to sign, and I'm just going to do a summary down here where I sign. I am signing yes to this, no to changing this, yes to this, yes to this. This is my understanding. And after the meeting, the suggestion would be to write a letter of understanding saying, today I signed a IEP in English. Although I didn't understand it, the conversation we had indicated that I signed yes to this, no to this, yes to this. I provided my signature contingent on this being true, right? If anything in this letter is incorrect, please notify me in a reasonable amount of time. And keep a copy of what you signed. If later on you compare the English to the Spanish and you know it ain't right, or it changed from what you signed, then that would be a totally different case, and we can continue talking about it, because they've now, you've signed a different document. So that would be an issue. Likely it would be a state compliance complaint, because they're violating they're violating some rules. Okay, so yeah, that would be the general answer. Again,
So the
Yes,
next,
that's what has happened to me. That sometimes they give me the Spanish translation, but when I ask the English to compare, and I see that there's some white pages and the information doesn't say the same. So sometimes I don't sign because I don't know what's going on. And as to recording, like you mentioned, because right now we're with COVID. I have a meeting on Zoom and I asked to record it. And at the moment of recording, the person, the technical, they say, you know what, we're gonna record it, but we are gonna call you and please wear a headphone so that we can continue and the translator can and the interpreter can interpret you, because why is it that they're going to record what is being interpreted?
Okay, so I'm not sure if I understood all the pieces of that. So in the first section, in the first part of the question, if I understand correctly, it would be, that's an issue if you've signed a document and then it was produced in Spanish and it said something different than in English. That's an issue. Okay, so do feel free to contact me and we can walk through what the next steps can be. Two, in terms of recording, right now that it's happening on Zoom, it is my understanding they can record because they're usually the hosts of Zoom. So just like now, like we're recording this now, Nubia is going to have access to that recording. He can kindly send it to me, but if I want to ensure that I'm recording my meeting, I should be able to record on my side. If they want to later send it to me, wonderful, but I'm going to record. And you are in your right to record the translator because that is part of the meeting. So that translator should be speaking out loud on the Zoom. Just like we can hear Erna in all the channels, you should be able to hear yourself, everyone else speaking, and the translator, as if you were in the room. If you were in the room, the translator wouldn't be in your ear. They would be right there and they would be recorded, right? So you have the right to that. Whenever these things happen, I want to make an example of this. You can absolutely write a letter of understanding. Mind you, will the school be a little bit defensive when you start putting things in writing? Probably. But to your defense, you can absolutely, I think Senora Maria or no sé quién, Vanessa, right? You are very much in your right to say, on this day, I was told to call on a different line and that the translator could not be recorded. I was also told blah, 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 blah. If anything in this letter is incorrect, please notify me within a reasonable amount of time, right? Keep that in writing. If those things were told to you and if they were inappropriate and later you want to make a complaint, please write that, right? Keep your letter of understanding so that you can submit it with your complaint. Okay, so that's why make sure that you have a copy that they received your notice to record. If you're in your Zoom meeting and they say you can't record, you can say, I have proof you guys received it 24 hours before. So I'm going to continue with recording, right? I gave you my notice. Oh, but we're not ready to record ourselves. That's something for you guys to problem solve. I am good on my part. I send it to you on time. I'm recording. Okay. Again, you can be assertive or you can choose a strategy that's going to work for you. But in terms of your rights, those are what your rights are. You can choose to do with them how you wish. We all speak different. We all advocate different. Again, we encourage collaboration and also we encourage that you let them know, you know what your rights are. And if that means, can I have a copy of that policy? Can I have that in writing, please? Can I have a copy of that you're saying, that policy that you're referencing? All that empowers you and lets them know that you know that they know that you know. Okay, so okay.
So we have time. I had two questions. So we have Juliana and Sandra. So, and then we will wrap up the evening.
Hola, Juliana.
So, Sophia, I have a question. When we parents are in transition to a middle school or high school, they ask us to fill a form, a parent view. So how can we protect those services, those IEP services, so that they won't take them away? Even though in the IEP, they tell us that they're gonna take out transportation. And when we fill that form, it's because
Give
of
me one
on parent
second,
view.
Juliana, just because of time, I want to make
So
sure that
how can we
under-
protect those services?
Okay, so to Juliana, just if she can help me making the question a little bit more concise so I can, because I hear the transportation and transition, but I don't think I understood the question. Can you repeat your question?
Yes. So this is happening a lot, and it's happening to me when I have to choose the transition school. So the IEP says if you do a choice school, then transportation doesn't qualify. But if we're not doing a choice school, we are a homeschool, then how come they can say automatically you do not qualify for transportation? So how can we keep or save that? I understand that that's there, but there's no other way where we can put it other than the minutes or parents' concerns.
We're talking about a transition from junior high to high school. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm afraid this kind of has a lot of pieces to it, but when a person is transitioning from junior high to high school, okay, and you're transitioning, that IEP follows you. Now, if you're changing placement, if you're going from a public school to homeschooling or a charter school or a private school, that is a completely different ballgame, because you're not just going from a public school to a public school. If that's the case, your IEP should follow you. And if transportation's on your IEP, it should remain on your IEP. However, when you make the choice to change from public to homeschool or to charter school or to a private school, that changes. Because by doing that, you are saying you're not going to have special education anymore. You're not going to have IEP anymore. And you are now subject to the funds from SELPA. And that's where I don't want to get too much into, especially because our time, because this is kind of a completely different ballgame. I know Juliana and I know each other from past, so feel free to call me. I'm kind of back, Juliana, so feel free to call me, or Brianna, but this is a different ballgame. When we switch from a public to a private or charter school, that no longer falls under the district's responsibility per se. And so funds for services come from a different source. Okay.
And then our last question is going to come from
Thank you. I'll call you.
Sandra Guerra.
Gracias, Juliana. Sí, yes, Sandra.
Yes, good evening. I want to ask my daughter. I had an IEP meeting in August, and the evaluations, they were asking me questions, and at the same time they were evaluating her, and they were asking me questions. The result was that she didn't qualify for special ed, and I told them that I was in disagreement, but among the team they tried to convince me and they made me sign, and I told them that she was being evaluated by the regional center, and they told me, well, once you have the results from the regional center, if it's different, you can come back. So now we have the results now in October, and now they're telling me that they cannot do an IEP because they're not doing them in person. So I wanna know if it's true that the school district is not conducting IEPs right now.
Okay. So one, schools are still doing IEPs. It is my understanding they're not doing them in person. They're being done virtually, over a Zoom platform or over the phone. Okay. But should they still be having your IEPs? Absolutely. If they're not, you can consider doing a state compliance complaint, because they should be holding meetings within 30 days of when you request them. So if you've requested a meeting and they're not giving it to you, and the 30 days have passed, you can definitely do a state compliance complaint. Now, in terms of, if I understand correctly, they did an initial evaluation to be eligible for special education. If they denied you eligibility, right? If they denied you eligibility, you can go to due process, or you can wait and have them evaluate her again at a later time. I'm not sure how old she is, but sometimes when they're younger, the needs are less obvious. So sometimes parents may wait, and next year the need becomes more obvious, and then they may become eligible. With you bringing up regional center, know that regional center is a completely different eligibility criteria. If you are eligible for regional center, it still doesn't mean that that makes you eligible for special education. So try to think of these two things as very separate. If a diagnosis from regional center helps you and you bring it to special education and they say, oh, they say he has autism, okay, fine, we'll take it. He does have autism, you're eligible now, great. But I just want to make sure that we don't mix up the two, because the eligibility criteria for special education and the criteria for regional center, very different. You can be in special ed and not be eligible for regional center, and vice versa. You can be eligible for regional center and not for special ed. So if you have more questions about eligibility, please feel free to contact me on the side. There are 12 categories that special education looks at. So we can talk more about those if you'd like, okay?
Yes, thank you. I will call you, definitely. Because at the regional center, they recommend speech therapy, and I agree. But special ed told me that they don't. She doesn't need that at the school district. So I will call you to follow.
Okay, muy bien, Sandra. Yeah, please feel free to give me a call and we can kind of hash those two out, because they're very separate. And sometimes they play tennis and they kind of want to send you one system to the other one and all that. So we can talk more about that.
Okay, I put in the chat.
Speak.
We've run out of time at this point. If you have any questions, I have put Sofia's contact information in the chat. I will also be sending everybody that has participated in tonight's Zoom a wrap-up email with the presentation again, Sofia's contact information and other updates. If I've also included my contact information. Want to thank you so much for being here and taking the time to educate yourself, and also learning the process, because when we all learn the process, it doesn't just help our kids, it helps all children, and it helps move the district towards a more inclusive education for our students with disabilities. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sofia. Thank you so much, Edna and Jose, for all your help, and everyone else for participating, being present. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And,
Gracias a todos por participar.
and Sofia, I just want to let you know that I'm a parent. My child is special ed for the past 8 years. I've also been a teacher for 19 years and a resource teacher for a year. And I've learned a lot from this 1 hour and a half presentation.
I am so happy to hear that. I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you very much for that feedback. I'm very glad. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be more savvy the next time I go to an IEP.
Please, and keep learning. There's a lot more information. Please feel free to give me a call or email me, and I'll send you more resources as well. And I'm sure you can share them with your students, other people. So feel free.
Yes, definitely. And I would like to have one of these meetings with the parents at my school.
feel free to contact me. Yeah,
Okay,
we can definitely
Okay,
do
good.
it. Okay.
thank you so much. I'm
right,
glad
thank
to
you,
meet
Angelica.
you.
You are
Thank
very,
you.
very
Thank you.
concise and very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback. Thank you. I think that was Erica. Thank you very much, Erica.
Sophia, I
Yes.
made screenshots of the poll. They're in
Oh.
the notes if you want to see them, or I can share them on the screen with you.
Oh, they're on
Should we-
the chat, you said?
They're in the notes in our agenda document.
Or we can hit the share button right now and share it with you.
Sure.
Okay, here goes.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the agenda thing open. Yeah, this is perfect. Okay, I got it.
Alrighty.
Very cool. We had oh, does it not say there how many people responded?
Yeah, we had 47 votes.
47 votes. Okay. Does it can you share the poll again, if you don't mind? Huh. It usually says it on top, 47 out of 80, or how many people were there. Okay, but
7 out of 59, but there's 4 staff, so
okay, 47
out of 55.
Okay, very cool.
Edna, don't leave yet.
Why?
Did she bolt? She's like, peace.
Why don't you want to let her leave?
Made her work today, huh? Okay, very cool. Okay, good. Thank you. I'll
So
close
good. We normally here at Long Beach Forward, and not everyone at Long Beach Forward, but our team, the Children and Families team, usually do a debrief of
Okay.
the different events that we conduct.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome to stay, only because we do like a brief like pluses, deltas, what worked, what didn't work, what could help us in the future. So
Okay.
I'd also like to just get if you all feel comfortable with being on camera super fast, just a screenshot. So hopefully I'm going to keep promoting for Thursday. So this all helps.
Cool.
or we could take a screenshot of the YouTube video. Either way.
Oh yeah, but were we on there?
Cool. Gotcha, Nubia.
Good.